Control yourself. Don't drink too much. Don't talk too much. Don't look that way. Don't stare at that boy. Don't giggle.
Well, I am so excited to introduce our listeners to Michelle Bursell. Michelle, welcome to Over It.
Well, thank you, Donna. It's hard for me to call you Donna because
Can you say why?
because we have been friends for many, many moons, and I always call you my meow. So
Yes.
all of a sudden I'm like, oh, should I call you Donna?
You can definitely call me Meow, and I'll call you Meow Meow, because we want to really keep it real. And there's so much I could say about you as an introduction. And I feel really conflicted because one of the things I want for people who are listening to this show is to really just connect to us as women, and yes, we have accomplishments, and there's so much I'm proud of that you've created and accomplished in your life, and I will name those things. But I also really want people to get a sense of who you are as a woman, and who I am as a woman, without feeling any sense of oh my goodness, look what she's achieved. She's different than me.
Right.
She's different than me, and therefore she must have been sort of born this way. Like, what could she have possibly had to get over? She probably just popped out of the womb ready to go.
Yeah,
And
right.
what I do want to say is that Michelle is a psychotherapist and the founder of the International Institute for Emotional Empowerment. And Michelle has had her work featured on in Parenting Magazine and the Washington Post, and many other publications. And she's been on TV, and she's worked with Fortune 500 companies. And her work has been touted as the next level of emotional intelligence. And she's written books, and she's amazing, and has the dubious honor of being my best friend. So Michelle, I just want to just start us off by, just hearing a little bit about, like, what is your reaction to this idea of being over it, which is what this show is all about. Like, what are you over? How did you get over it? What are you still trying to get over? Where are you in your journey as a woman?
I love that. Well, first of all, thank you for having me as your first guest. I feel completely honored, and I love the topic. And when you told me, this was the name of the podcast, I was like, oh, yay. And then I felt like, oh my gosh, am I really over anything? Like, I kind of froze. I was like, am I, obviously I'm still a work in progress. You hear about it every time we talk. So yes, but then today, of course, just trusting the process, trusting intuition, there were some things that came forward, and how I have grown. I think we all grow as women. And, what I will say is that, like, getting into that 50 range is like, there's just a sense of greater freedom and greater wisdom, and humility that I think comes with it.
Do you mind me asking how old you are? I mean, I know how old you are, but for our over listeners,
this is crazy, Donna. I'm ageless.
You are ageless, but you're in your early 50s.
I'm early 50s, yeah. Did you want us swearing in this?
You're welcome to swear.
Okay, good. Because sometimes it just rolls out.
Yes, let it roll.
I think there is there's just more fun once you get to a certain age, and I think along with that, the big thing that came forward that I have gotten over is really pushing myself, and that has been a lifelong journey. And I feel like I'm still in probably in some ways, in the process of it, but I do feel much more at peace with it and understanding my own ebbs and flows of my energy, of what works for me, and really honoring that like I never have before.
For you, what's the distinction between, pushing myself and, being motivated, or God forbid, ambition in a woman? But for you, like, what's that distinction between pushing myself versus like, I'm ambitious, or I'm inspired, I'm motivated? What's that distinction?
Well, I think you're saying it. It's that natural sense of inspiration. But I think for me, what I struggled with for a long time was just how I defined myself based on external success, how much money I made. There was just this ego component to how I pushed myself that was like never ending. And then of course I would be depleted, and I would be, just depleted. And then, it's that getting back up on that hamster wheel, like, okay, but I've got to succeed, and I've got to do this. And and a couple of years ago, I mean, we talked about this, like I was just so lost, so struggling. And it was my letting go of my ego attachments to the external, to what success means. And it was excruciating. It was the most painful. I've gone through a few dark nights of the soul. What was interesting about this one is that this is the first time I went through it. I had all these tools that, I use and teach. I was completely sober. I stopped drinking, I think, in 2019. And so even these small ways that I would lean towards comfort to help me escape some of the pain I was feeling from it. It was just like the universe was not letting me avoid it. It was just like, you've got to be in this. And it's been some of my greatest growth. It has been my worst pain. And it's a growth that I'm so proud of, because it's not like anyone can see it. It's not based on any recognition, except about how I feel within myself. And with it came a greater love for myself, for other women in particular, but for all people, and really a greater compassion for all the stuff that we do to ourselves, because we're coming from this place of lack or not enough. And so it's been a powerful journey.
Wow. I mean, you and I have talked countless times over the last 23 something years about, I can't believe like this is coming up again for me. Like I thought I was over this, right? And here it is again, or here's like that next layer of the onion that I have to peel. And it feels like I'm never going to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop. And so when you think about those dark days of the soul and that pain that you had to go through, it makes me think about all these layers that we keep coming to that next layer and feeling like, oh my God, I cannot believe this is still here for me. Like, what in the world do I have to do? What were some of those layers? I mean, you named some of them, like attachment to external ideas about what success is. Were there other aspects of those layers of the onion that you've had to work through in terms of your relationship to yourself, your femininity, your body, your sexuality? What else comes to mind?
Yeah. Well, when you speak of the femininity piece, I think that was it. It was me, I was a go-getter. I was like, I can make shit happen. I can do a lot. I was very much in my masculine, and I've been on a path, a spiritual path that included the divine feminine, that included the feminine. But this was like, girl, you are going into the womb, darkness, and you are going to feel untethered, because I had to both really, and that's why I said there is a deeper love and appreciation, not just for myself, but for other women, because I was relearning how powerful our love is, the love of a woman, the innate power that we have in our receptivity. And so all of this, where, I mean, we're therapists and we know when we're depressed or when someone's depressed. I was depressed, but it was a deep going in. So I could remember how to receive and heal my divine masculine energies within me, so that, and kind of circling back to that question you had before about, like, God forbid we're ambitious or we're motivated. It has to come from a healthy masculine place, where it's not about, I'm doing this to somehow prove myself. I'm doing this to show others that I'm enough, which was a lot of that motivation before. And really coming to that recognition that, this is now my motivation is all about contribution. Yes, I still want to, be abundant and make money, but it comes secondary, quite honestly. So it's really kind of understanding, like, I came here, my belief is I came here, we all came here with a soul mission. And I've got to make sure that I'm stepping into that in a way that feels like I'm in alignment, I'm in integrity with all aspects of myself, the feminine and the masculine, and the receptivity, the ability to still, yes, go and make things happen, but feeling that daily in my body, what that feels like, and trusting that when it's like, I cannot look at my work today, then I'm not meant to look at my work today. And then the next day, when it was hard, there was a point where it lasted for weeks, where it was just like, I can't look at my work. And that's really difficult. I've been fortunate where there wasn't like a financial pressure on top of that. So I was able to really stay in that womb. Then there was a time to come out, and I think trusting that as well. And it's scary after like being like womb-like, and you're like, okay, I'm getting used to this, to put ourselves back out into the world again.
Yeah, you're using language like divine masculine and divine feminine. That's language that you and I may use a lot. And for people who are less familiar with those concepts, I really like how you're talking about a difference that you can feel in your body. So when you're out of alignment with the feminine, or you're out of alignment with the masculine, can you talk a little bit about how you can tell that's happening in your body?
With the masculine, I overdoing with the masculine is that drain, is that overwhelm. People call it burnout, like all the stuff that people, I train in corporate America, and corporate America has been based on the masculine and masculine notions of success. So yes, of course, people are burnt out and they're overwhelmed because it's not working for people, because it's not including the divine feminine. Our divine feminine energy is our receptive aspects. It's the parts of us that can draw in our needs, and in order to draw in, we have to be still. And it's not what we're taught. And it can feel like we're self-sabotaging. We have all these, and that was why it took me so long to be in this space, because it was unraveling all those layers, or all those layers of the onion, as we were talking about, of these beliefs that we've been programmed to believe about the feminine, that's completely inaccurate and takes away our magic, our passion, our joy of life.
I'm just thinking about times in my own life and in the lives of so many women I know, when it feels like all you can do is just get through the day. Maybe you're still raising the kids, you're working, you're trying to help with the house. And it feels like there's just no time to be silent. There's no space to go inward. There's this sense of like resistant to the idea that that's even a possibility. But even in those times, are there things that you have done to try to just find that space in yourself, and how did you do that? Because you've raised 3 kids and you've been a working mom and all of it. So when things were at like their craziest, like what were some of those ways that you would take time for yourself, even small windows? What were you doing to sort of be silent and tune in?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, even thinking about this, when we say to ourselves, like, we don't have time, like, we all have the same amount of time. So then what are we prioritizing? Right. And so, of course, we're prioritizing our kids, but we can still say, like, I mean, I would prioritize putting on a 30-minute show to go meditate rather than do laundry, or whatever. So, I mean, it became really clear even early on for me that if I don't start my day in some way that is nurturing to myself, like, I'm not going to be happy. And then what's the point? So that was something that, I got early on. And I think it was, I really learned that back in our days in Chicago when we went to see Shenawa, the shaman, who was really like, I mean, she looked at my energy and she was like, girl, you are so out of balance. And she really got me going to this, learning what self-care is really, which is not like, I mean, bubble baths and manicures are great, but it was really like tuning in, learning how to meditate, all that.
Even if that means getting up at an hour before the kids, just to get in that discipline to just take some self-care. It's still really sad and astounding to me when I hear women, even our age, who will say things like, I know it's selfish, but I'm just really wanting a day to myself. Or I know it's selfish, but I just don't feel like taking care of anyone today. And I think about how, fucked we all are by the patriarchy, that this is sort of the mindset, which is sort of like, and it hurts men and women, but that as a woman, obviously my sole, role is to provide for others, provide care and nurturance and support for others. And I come last. I mean, personally, that's something that I'm over, but it took time to get over it. It took time for me to learn how to be a mother who felt empowered to take care of herself and who could figure out ways to do that. So yeah, what are your thoughts about this idea of selfishness, and are there aspects of that you've had to get over in your own thinking in your life?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, totally. Like, I think, as girls, we're like taught to color in the lines and please. And so, and anytime we don't do that, we're called selfish, right? So, yes, I had to get over that. I think what I recognized was a few things. First of all, my own unhappiness in avoiding my truth or my needs, but also, there's a gift in being a therapist, you can really take in lessons as you see patients or clients going through, similar experiences. And what I saw was that women who were so giving, so caring, unintentionally were often engaging in passive aggressive behaviors. Why? Because we have to find a way to get our needs met. Like it's how we're built. And so we're either going to do it in a way where we're honest with ourselves and we value ourselves enough to say, look, I'm doing this, or it's going to come out in all these leaky kind of just not nice, sticky, stuff that we do. And then we tell ourselves it's okay that we do it, but there's another way, and
right. Or we reach for the thing that's right at hand that satisfies for the moment. I mean, you talk about relationship to alcohol, but it could be relationship to spending money needlessly, or,
food. Yes.
Food, right.
Oh, totally. So many women that would come to me struggling, with eating. And it's just like, that becomes the like it's like literally the treat, because you're not willing to like treat yourself to what you really need, the love, the self-care,
Well,
all
I'm
that.
just thinking too, like, I feel like anything that really I've been able to share any wisdom around with another woman has come from my own experience of struggle, probably around that very same issue or something adjacent to that issue. And, in thinking back, and this is not to like throw anybody's parents under the bus, but what kinds of things do you feel like you had to get over, like literally get over or through, from childhood or adolescence or early adulthood, to get where you are now, that came from early pain?
Yeah. I mean, my whole pain growing up was, having a highly critical parent to someone who was highly emotionally sensitive. And, so just total lack of self-worth, and self-worth attained by, the external, like, how do you get approval? How can I earn approval? And so, there's these different layers to that, which is why it was interesting, at one point it's trying to seek approval for one thing. And then, but if that core wounding isn't addressed, like it goes from approval, of one thing over here to trying to get approval over there to,
It's like whack-a-mole.
it's yes, exactly.
It's like a frantic game of whack-a-mole that can go on for decades.
Yeah.
What do you know to be some of the messages you took away from that upbringing? Things that you believed about yourself, things you believed about the world you live in, things you believed about men that you've had to get over?
Well, I would say, the big thing was, that I was not good enough. And in the sense that, like, not to shine too brightly, the sense that I'm a pain, like a pain in the ass. So it's still, I still work on asking for help. That can be like, there is a small group of people that I feel comfortable asking for help. In general, it can be like, okay, I've got to be mindful of my what the narrative is underneath that, right? Like, it's always like, oh, I don't want to bother, but you don't know if you're bothering unless, and you just don't know. Like, sometimes people, do want to help. They do want to be in that, there is a intimacy to being, to asking for help. With men, I think I had good narratives in overall with that, but of course there's still, I think, just the layering of like the patriarchy and like a woman's place, my place based on that patriarchy, is something that I had to get over. Getting over, again, that sense of worth based on income, how much you make, that's success. It's part of it, but when it becomes so ego, like, to prove yourself, right?
And so much emphasis on the way you look.
Oh gosh,
well,
yes.
right?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
And that was something that I actually received a lot of approval about. And so it was like ultra focused on me, like crazy. Like, if I had a chipped nail, it was like judged. So then, the focus. And so if we look at, thank goodness I did not up in social media and the stuff that's going on today, because, to me, what they're going through, like I experienced that in a very microcosmic way. And now, people, women who are putting themselves, online to get that, get those likes, get that external feedback, but they're also, so attuned to the criticalness, that they're receiving from the outside, as well as how that, builds internally. It just feeds on itself.
Right, right. Well, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll hear a little bit more from Michelle. Okay, we're back with Michelle Purcell. And Michelle, we were just talking a little bit about, in particular, our relationship to our physical bodies, and growing up, how much focus was really placed on that as like our greatest worth and value. And now thinking about the conversations you and I have been having more recently in our 50s now, and as our bodies are changing like so dramatically, like I feel like it's, like when you go through adolescence, you're just going through it. You don't really know exactly what's happening. You just know like things are changing dramatically and it feels out of your control. I feel like we're in another stage of that with a lot more information, but it's still not easy, in terms of emotionally and hormonally and physically weight and things shifting and changing and feeling less juicy and not bleeding. And there's so much going on that I think most women are not talking about. You and I talk about it, but I think most women are not talking about it. And of course, in the medical world, it just feels like it's just this, oh yeah, menopause or perimenopause. And it's just been really recently that there are now sort of like these online clinics that are popping up, these companies that are, you can consult with them online about what's going on with your specific hormones. But this is really, really new in the history of women. And I really want women to be talking more about what it's like to be going through this amorphous perimenopause, menopausal stage, and what that's like for them, and really honoring both the important pieces that come with this next level of maturation and evolution in your womanhood, but also talking about what's hard. And I'm wondering for you, what your experience has been like in this transition.
Yeah, well, it's been multifaceted. On one hand, it feels like for me, it's been an invitation to get my health together, to really take my health seriously. I've previously was leaning more into the emotional and spiritual side of things, and I'd always dig in there, and I would do yoga once or twice a week or something like that. But I'm telling you, as I mentioned, like, I stopped drinking. It wasn't because I had a drinking problem. I was just like, I just feel like I need to stop drinking. I started exercising every day. I take a crazy amount of vitamins, but I feel like there's something guiding me that's like, this is the time to not take for granted our health. I'm still working on, I wish I could say I was over it, but I'm still working on my relationship with sugar. It comes and goes, but I really don't think it's good for us, and I think we are given an invitation to say, we need to be over this, that's trying to help us so that we can age, with ease, or so that we're not struggling so much as we age. I think the complexities of this, come to, like you said, like doctors are sometimes like, yeah, menopause, whatever. Or they're like, yeah, we can help you with estrogen, we can help you with progesterone, all that. And it's almost a bit like the Wild West. What I've experienced when I was in perimenopause, I had one doctor that wanted to prescribe so much stuff to me that it was way overkill, to, doctors now like being afraid to prescribe a different thing. And they all have their different ways. You can get the saliva test, the blood test, and here's your results, but 3 different doctors are going to read it 3 different ways. But to me, what this comes back to is what do I feel I need? What works for my body? And you and I have talked about this because, I'm like, what supplement have you used? What have you done for this? And then, we're like, oh my gosh, we're bloating. We feel like we're pregnant, but sometimes the supplement that works for you won't work for me. And sometimes it does. And that's what's so difficult, is because, we can't replicate each other's menopause journey. We can have kind of these similarities, but we don't know what's going on hormonally. I think the bottom line is, I don't know how much doctors know what's going on or how to exactly pinpoint it. So I think, certainly there's some that are more educated and really dedicate themselves to this, but I think and thankfully so many more people are talking about it, but I think we've got a ways to go to clearly, understanding how do we interpret these results and support women and listen to women.
That's part of why I really want to be having these conversations, because I know that women are struggling in silence. Yeah. Maybe not to the extent like our mother's generation was, but I'm not sure it's that much better for the majority of women. Yeah. And you're right that no one thing's going to work for every person, but the ability to just share ideas, share resources, feels so important. And to be able to have a conversation with someone, yes, your doctor, but also a trusted friend or another overt sister or somebody that you can just say, hey, I'm noticing things are getting a little dry down there and it's painful. Or, yes, I don't know what to do. I look like I'm 5 months pregnant and nothing about my eating has changed. And I am so upset about it. And I don't want to be told that this is just the way it is and there's nothing to be done about it. I just want to be having those conversations in a really open and real way. And also, like, where is both the grief in the experience of transitioning from quote unquote your maiden phase into, what comes next? Like, in Native American heritage, that might be going from maiden to mother to crone. And then we have all these negative connotations of what it is to be crone. But like, what can we claim in an empowered way about stepping into this time in our lives? And also, can we talk about what is hard and where's the grief in releasing, our periods? And can you speak to some of your own experience in this journey?
Yeah, I think what has helped me, because I am now officially crone, and to me it was very celebratory, but I didn't think it was going to be, because again, we've had all these connotations about what crone is like. We're crumpled over and
like witchy. We're witchy.
Well, yeah. I don't even mind witchy, but like just
a lot of people mind witchy.
I don't know, all curled up or something. But certainly not healthy, not vibrant. And I think that's part of why, I'll speak for myself. I want to feel youthful. I want to have energy. I want that aliveness. And, sometimes, that was part of my journey too, of taking better care of myself, because I think one of the first symptoms that came down was just, massive energy loss.
Right. Like fatigue, brain fog.
Yes, totally. But I also, now this is my journey. For me, it coincided with this depression, but to me was my soul's journey of letting go of the masculine and all the ways that I operated in that way that was unhealthy for me. So for me, it's been an understanding of, okay, there's these, changes happening. But with that, I think there is so much wisdom. And and my personal belief is like, we don't just go from maiden to, mother to crone, or we are carrying all these, we carry those now as crone, like they don't go away from us.
I love that you're saying that. Like, so maiden is still in us, mother is still in us, crone is in us.
Yeah,
we
now
embody all of these.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
and it's up to me to continue to foster my maiden energy in a way that's alignment for myself, and that for me is because I value myself enough. I'm going to take walks in nature, even though I've got this to-do list. It's like, I don't care, because I know how walks in nature fuel not just myself, but what I would say my maiden self, who finds joy in the flowers and, the fern and the tree. And so, we can buy into this notion of crone crumpled over, like, or it's like crone gets to carry all these because we've been through those experiences.
That's gorgeous. And I also like the idea of, holding the maiden in a loving way and holding the mother in a loving way within ourselves, because something you said at the beginning of the show was just stepping into a time in your life that feels also fun. So even as things are changing, changes are happening, there's this, and for me as well, I feel like literally, like when I turned 30, nothing much for me changed. When I changed 40, I didn't really have any big emotions about it. And so approaching 50, I'm now almost 51, I felt like, oh, no biggie, right? I'm turning 50. Yes, these changes are happening. But what surprised me was literally on my 50th birthday, it felt like the tectonic plates within me shifted. And I dropped so deeply and profoundly into myself in a way that I could never have. Oh, don't look at me like that. I'm going to cry. I could have never imagined how fulfilling and sweet of a homecoming that was. And so when you talk about like the maiden and the mother within us as crones, it deeply touches me, because I feel like I feel more love towards my inner maiden and more love towards my inner mother than I've ever felt in my life, and actually feel like I want to nurture them and honor them more than maybe I ever could before. When I was those ages, I was so filled with internal struggle and strife and self-hatred and, inner conflict that I couldn't fully embrace who I was. And now that I'm almost 51 and I'm still alive, it's such a profound opportunity to say, I am so over holding myself back from like loving myself as fully as I can. Like, I'm so over that. And so I want to live in that over itness every day that I can.
That's why I love you, Meow.
That's why I love you too. Okay, we're going to take a little break. Be right back. Okay, we're back over at Sisters, talking to the beautiful Michelle Bursell about so many, many, many things. One of the things I'm wondering about is, between us, we have 3 sons. You have twin boys who are just going to be going off to college. Your eldest is already in college, and you're going to be empty nesting with your hubby. I guess I'm wondering about all that. I'm wondering about transition to empty nesting. I'm also wondering about, mothering boys within the patriarchy, and what that experience has been like for you, and kind of like your journey from when the boys were born to now, and obviously your daughter Avery as well. There's been a journey there in your mothering, but yeah, anything in there.
that's a lot in there.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, empty nesting. I am just, it was interesting because with my daughter, I felt like I really had to prepare for it. And it was very intuitive. And even when she was like a junior in high school, I was starting to mourn it. But I think that was also just the mourning of like, okay, my kids are growing older. They don't need me in the same way. So I think it was, although it was kind of focused on her leaving for college in a year, it was, you know, just this sense of, changing my role as a mother. But in many ways, I am enjoying this role, where, I mean, already like my kids are scattered, like, it's like they're home, but they're scattered, and it will be different. So I can't speak to that yet, but what I'll say is that for me, it has meant, prayer and reflection about, how do I consciously want, our relationship to look, between my husband and I. We will be going on 24 years together in a few weeks. So, I am very much like, we've got to keep dreaming together. Like, and I will say this is the first time where like it hasn't felt naturally that our dreams were aligning. And so, what does that mean for us? And how can we, work together to, really co-create together? Because, I want the second half to be the better half. So, really coming from that, place.
I just think that is so powerful, both pieces. One, I want to make sure we keep dreaming together. And two, the acknowledgement that we're not necessarily on the same page right now or yet about what that dream will be or what the vision will be.
Yeah.
When we're in our child rearing stage, it's all about the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, also you and Steve have been excellent about really upholding your marriage and always doing those date nights. And you guys have been really exemplary in that. But even still, so much of our time and focus and the organization of the family is around the children and their activities and everything else. And that's definitely changing and going away. And now, for good or bad, right? The focus is on, you and I. And what does that mean? And maybe one of you has thought a lot about it and the other person hasn't thought as much about it, or what you're not
I wonder who that is.
I'm not saying anything, but I'm just saying I don't know. But you could have really different ideas about where you want to end up. And, really all of that stuff that is kind of like the stuff when you first get together with someone, you have to have those conversations and throughout the lifespan of the relationship. And here you are again, you're going to be on the precipice of having those conversations again, potentially.
Yeah, totally.
And it kind of means anything, you could create anything, which is both amazing and maybe sometimes overwhelming, but, so huge transition for your marriage as well.
Totally. Yes. And I think the big thing for me was like, there's an obvious kind of prescribed route that we could take, but I don't want to feel so narrowly confined to that. Like that feels way too confining to me. And if we're not conscious about it, if we're not actively like dreaming, it's just too easy to fall into that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was very much about that. Even with our children, like you said, I was very much like, we can just fall into this, parenting thing, or we can be conscious about our relationship. And so, but this will be a new phase, a totally different phase. And part of it is like, I'm just like all about like getting out, like, how can we stay busy? Because, I want things to feel expansive rather than that,
that life is shrinking. Right. And you're
Yes.
just rattling around the house together,
Yes.
taking each other for granted.
For real. Yeah. Don't want that. Do not want that. Yeah.
I feel like you brought such a level of consciousness to the way that you raised your kids. And I know I said before, I was particularly thinking about the way you raised your sons, but obviously very much the way you raised your daughter as well. I mean, you kind of made a face when I said that, but I do see that you had a level of consciousness. Yes, there were things we talked about, and you had as many struggles and internal dilemmas as any parent, but I do feel like you brought a level of consciousness in terms of like what you wanted to convey to the kids, and particularly like around boundaries and relationships and their bodies. I mean, this is just like what I observed, because you became a mom a couple of years before me.
Yeah.
I mean, was there anything you found relative to your own experience in life about raising a girl child and in raising boy children?
Well, I guess in it, how I look at it is more like there is at that soul level. So they're like individual different souls, So I mean, there for sure there's gender pieces to it, but I don't know if I can.
That's not your frame. You're thinking more about each of these kids as individual selves.
Yes.
Yeah.
The April in your soul, tears falling like the raindrops.
I think that to me has been the bigger difference, like just feeling into like who they are as individuals and their needs, and really because my daughter, even though she's female, and there's certainly connection that we have from that. One of my sons is probably more spiritually and emotionally like me, right? So it's like kind of feeling into that with each child and navigating that. So but no, I appreciate that. I think my face is kind of like, I don't know, I feel like the younger generations are I don't know, I just feel like they're in there even so much more. I mean, I do feel like I've been good with like having conversations with them and getting into the nitty-gritty, but like I don't know, I love how today's parents, like, they might raise a little shaman. You know what I mean? Where I felt for myself, like, I guess the thing for me was that our generation was kind of breaking out that it's okay to be in this world that, is spiritual and talks about the universe. Like for us as parents, like, I'll just say for me, like, and where I live in the Midwest, like, I was definitely a different parent. Like I did not fit in with the norm. And that's what helped me also establish different ways of being. Like I was not going to go along with the narrative of like self-sacrifice, which was a lot of, the women in my community. But I was already kind of out there. So I just kind of went with it. Like the whole way that I've lived, it was different than the norm. And so I guess in some ways, like my kids, picked up on that, but it wasn't like I was consciously trying to make them think differently per se, but just more, I don't know, I guess I just wanted them to be aware of prescribed narratives and, try to break free from those that can hurt us, for boys who, I know the big thing for me with, I had my twin boys, they were born prematurely. And even when they were babies, and they would be freaking out because they had extra sensitivities to everything, people would be like something about, them crying. And I would just say, the world needs more men that are able to show their emotions.
Yes.
Yeah, like early on, like, so I guess there were things that were like,
Well, and I remember stuff like even when the kids were young, not like tiny, but you would always say to them like, if your dad and my door is closed, that means we're having intimate time and you don't come in, but you really modeled, I think, something incredibly healthy, boundaries, and also like this is part of a loving relationship, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, why have shame around sex when sex is awesome,
But I mean, you say that, but obviously you had to get over and past things in your life to get to that place, because I know you were not raised in a house where it was like, woo,
Yes.
there's shame in having sex because sex is fun. That's not the house you were raised in. So, I mean, it's interesting because there's all these things that I think we've gotten over and we take them for granted now.
You're right. It just reminded me is how you took me to the sex shop for the first
In Chicago?
I think it was in Wisconsin. It was my first time going to a sex shop.
Wow. And that was probably in your 30s?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, and you said, but I mean, we get over things, and thank God we get over things. But then they become so assimilated in who we are. We forget that we ever would have flinched at that.
Oh my gosh. I grew up Catholic and it was like, yes, no, like even, oh gosh. Yeah, no. Like I can't even explain.
Well, okay. If I was going to ask you one last thing, or maybe close to one last thing, how did you get over the shame around sex, or whatever the implicit or explicit messages that you got about sex from childhood? How did you get over it?
Oh
What was
gosh.
your journey?
My journey. Really, I mean, my journey has been a spiritual journey of remembering who we are as women. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a joke, like what we are taught. I mean, like really, like when life was about where we honored and cherished women, when we worshiped a divine mother, like our sexuality was praised as part of our creativity and our power. And even the notion, like I was just saying this to my husband because we were just at a wedding, and the bride was like, I got my ring and all this. And I'm like, it's so interesting to me that like that's still a thing, that the thought is like a woman is kind of, now she's got the ring, now she's trapped a man, when actually this whole notion of marriage was developed by men, was developed by the church, so that in marriage they could tell that the woman had to be faithful so that they could pass on the land and so forth to their children. But before that, like it was once a year, let's reconnect, partner, and decide, do we still want to be together? Do we still enjoy each other? And or they might have an agreement within their relationship of, yeah, we still love each other, but we're going to have other partners. And so this whole notion of marriage was developed by church and men, so that they could know that whoever the women, the child that the women were having were there, so they could pass it down property to them. So it's fast. So that, I know I'm going off on this crazy tangent, but it's like, it's so tied to like who we are as sexual beings. Like it is our power and our magic and our creativity. And we have like so lost ourselves in narratives that aren't even true.
You said my journey has been a spiritual one, right? In terms of reclaiming your sexuality and, your womanhood in so many ways. And I know that to be true for you. I mean, and this is nothing against the church, because your kids grew up in the church. But when I met you, you definitely were much more of a practicing Catholic. And
yes,
I think I was like your witchy little friend. I mean, how did you get, I'm just thinking about the women who are going, yeah, but how did you do that? How did you get over that, Michelle? Like, how did you get from the way you were raised, and you were someone, and who still does, I think, has a deep connection to God, and, maybe your conceptualization of God or goddess has changed, but your deep connection, deeply
Yes.
connected, and you deeply honor the church in so many ways. So like, how did you get to where you are today, where you're like over those
Oh, gosh.
notions?
So, it listening to my heart and defining for myself what love is. And so what that meant was a journey. So you probably introduced me to Shenoa, right? This was our shaman. And this was kind of like my first kind of like opening into something that wasn't Catholic. Like I told my husband, like, for you to marry me, you got to become Catholic. Like, he went through the whole thing. And then like a few years later, I'm like, actually, I think I'm into the goddess. So, like my whole family's Catholic. My mom literally called me the devil for my beliefs, which it's not even half of where I am now.
You mean in terms of your growing interest in goddess practice and things like that? She called you the devil for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was something like, I mean, I don't even know anymore. Like, it was like talking about the universe and whatever. And I don't know, it just freaked her out. Right. Like, it's
right.
So I think for me, it was really the differentiation about, what is love to me versus what is fear, what is true to me. Can I trust myself versus this, prescribed notion? And then as I've gone along and gone deeper and deeper into my spiritual studies and so forth, it's really understanding that the part of me that loved Catholicism was because so much of Catholicism is based on the rituals that were done in goddess worship. So now I understand that, but it was always that what is going to bring me into deeper connection with the divine. Now, some people, and I'm still very good friends with, are on this spiritual path, still very Catholic, and it very much is creates union with their souls and that divine essence that I don't know how to describe.
Yeah.
So I don't, it certainly does not have to be my path. I think people find that in other ways, but for me, it was very important to be able to own for myself what is love and what is my connection with the divine. Despite that fear being thrown back in my face, and it was just that I can, it helps us grow. I mean, I was devastated. I cried myself to sleep, and I was in my I had children. I was, it devastated me because I was like, don't you know my heart? Like, can't you see, like, and feel and experience my heart? But because I was,
you mean to your mom, you were feeling that.
Yes. Yeah. But it, for some people, it's just very black and white. But that's their fear, and that helped me grow to understand, like, part of my mission and I mean, my work is all about feeling every emotion as love. And that part of that journey is recognizing the difference between what's our fear-based reaction versus love, expansion, and all that. And so, I was given a master's class on that.
You mean through life?
Yes, totally.
I mean, you're someone like many people who, and I can't name it for you, but we all go through our traumas and the ways that those traumas manifest in our bodies. And as women, often how those traumas can manifest in terms of our reproductive health, or just the way that we think about our genitals, or if we think about our genitals, or we think about our ovaries, if we think about our ovaries. And, I'm just wondering about, for you, that level of healing in the body, and also in how you think about your body and your reproductive health. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like at a young, I feel like as a teen, maiden, I was very, I loved my sexual energy but there was shame around that, and it was like, there was definitely shame, anything around yoni. And now it's just like, I mean, when I'm, this is probably way too.
It's not too much for our over it sisters. They need to hear the words.
So when I'm, washing yoni every day, it's like, I just see her as my beautiful rose. Like, I just give thanks to my rose and the petals, and, it's like, yeah, like, there's a huge difference from.
So you really are honoring, and you have a specific relationship with your vulva. You are honoring her every day. And, there might be people who even now might roll their eyes at hearing that, but there is something to be said for really cultivating a relationship with our own bodies. And I remember, like I repartnered in my late 40s. I've been with my current partner for 4 years. Very different experience coming into partnership at this stage of life, going through perimenopause and, and I remember saying to him things like, I wanted him to really have a relationship with my vulva. Like, I wanted, I wanted it to be a spoken relationship. Like, that just felt really important to me, because I felt like before in my life, like, I'd have sex and, but I wanted to have this spoken relationship and acknowledgement. And I remember saying to him things like, if it were a flower, what flower would it be? And if it had a name, what would you call it? And here's how I think about it. And here's what and just feeling empowered finally to say, like, I want to include this part of me in our discussions and in my sense of myself and my sense of my sexuality. Like, this isn't just an entry point, like this is sacred part of myself. But contrasting that to ourselves in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, I think it's just, and seeing how my own mother was, like, from my perception, so cut off from her body, like the entire time that I was growing up, just seeing her be so cut off from her body. And there were no words. I didn't grow up with words for my body, my vulva. Like, it just wasn't talked about. Yeah.
No. Right. Not at all.
So coming into this part of your life, you're really honoring your yoni, you're giving it loving attention and nurturance every day. And that becomes part of your spiritual practice and your self-care.
For sure. And I feel like if we don't, we will lose our sexual energy. And I've certainly shared with you that there's been times where I'm like, I just feel like no desire, like, before it was like a natural thing, like in my 40s, where it's like once a week, like, I'm ready to go, let's have sex, like, and that has definitely dwindled. But what I'm finding is, and I'm still in self-discovery about this, but I feel like it is also a priority thing. And if I don't prioritize my own sexual energy, then it can just, like, I think this is like the time in our lives where it's like, what really matters to you? Because if you take it for granted or something, I think it starts to fade away. And so I think it's where I've been drawn to is like, I can't take for granted anymore that once a week that like spike of hormone is going to happen. And I've got to make sure I'm like actively cultivating that energy within me.
I really love that idea of cultivating the energy within you, because so often I might hear a younger woman say, oh gosh, I gave him just such, I'm going to say, like, I gave him sex. Hopefully we can go a couple days before he wants it again. You're talking about wanting to continue to cultivate this beautiful sexual energy within yourself for yourself. And yes,
Yes.
you may be sharing it with your husband, but
Yes.
you're wanting to cultivate it for yourself.
For sure. For sure. And then I think it becomes easier to cultivate in your relationship. Don't have that first within ourselves, then then we're kind of relying on someone else to ignite it. And I don't know.
It's performative, right? It's for the other.
Oh gosh,
Not so for ourselves.
terrible. Ugh.
But we've been there. We've been there. So you were saying that this stage of life for you is about focusing and getting clear on what matters and really cultivating that. If you could go back and give advice to the 18-year-old you, what would you tell her?
I would just, flood, to all of our 18-year-old selves, like just flood them with love, like see them for their hearts, and that is really that is everything. That is everything. And to trust that.
And we wish that for all of our Over It sisters who are in their 40s and 50s and beyond, to really just be able to honor their own hearts and flood themselves with love, and flood the other women in their lives with love, and for us to see one another's hearts.
Yes.
That's like such a privilege of being alive at this stage of the game, is like to really see one another's hearts so fully, and give and receive that heart energy with everyone in our lives. But I do think in particularly with women, that there's something so sacred about that. And I am so deeply honored to call you my bestie. And so grateful to have you on the show. And I'm sure that this conversation that we're having will spark a lot of interesting conversations out there in the world. So I just want to thank you so much for being part of the show today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And I know the show is for women in their 40s and 50s, but I hope it just expands, because I just feel like there's going to be wise maidens, there's going to be, wiser crones. And I just hope that everyone takes in, your wisdom, the wisdom offered just in the caliber of questions that you ask, and just in your heart, and wanting to, other women to share their stories, because how that will that will touch others. And I think that was why it was part of my response. And with my age, it's not that I'm ashamed of my age, it's like I'm over the connotations that come with it. So for me, it's just I know how I feel, and I think that's more of what I'm leaning into at this time. And I hope that through podcasts like this, that we learn to define ourselves by the things that really matter, like our hearts and how we feel.
That's beautiful. I love you, Meow Meow.
Love you too, Meow.
Thanks for listening.
The April in your soul, tears falling like the raindrops through the sound, colors reflection in your eyes. The April in your heart, blossoms of the flowers of all kinds. I love them all. Spring is in your eyes, spring is in your heart. I want to live in, and the April of your soul, dark clouds of the winter. Your soul, tears falling like the raindrops through the sound, colors, reflection in your eyes. The April in your heart blossoms of the flowers of all kinds.